Merry Christmas to our family. Mom and I are going to reminisce about Christmases past. Of course, there's been a lot of Christmases in our lifetime so far, and we're not going to talk about all of them. As a matter of fact, only a few of them. But I've got some memories of some Christmases that were pretty unique, and Mom also has some that she would like to talk about. The first one that I would like to talk about is the Christmas of 1970, and it was the Christmas that I was 18 years old. At the time, my father was unemployed, and it was a great trial to my family. That Christmas, there wasn't a lot under the Christmas tree. As a matter of fact, there wasn't hardly anything. We were surprised by some gifts from a secret Santa, and my mother also sewed some clothes for my 5 sisters. Now, when I was 18 years old, my sister Juliet was not yet with us. She was born in 1971, and of course that was a few months after the Christmas of 1970. The one thing that I remember specifically about that Christmas was I was looking forward to my upcoming mission, and one of the things that I was looking forward to at some point was the missionary Bible. Now, back in those days, we did not have the LDS edition of the scriptures like we do now, but when missionaries were getting ready to go out, oftentimes they would get, it was an LDS edition of the Bible, and it was really nice. And so the Christmas of 1970, there was only one gift that had been purchased for our family, and it was my parents gave me my missionary Bible, and it's a treasure that I will always treasure. That missionary Bible and I became really close companions, especially when I was on my mission in Chile. So that's one of the great Christmas memories that I have.
It's great, yeah. One of the Christmas memories I have when I was quite young, we lived in Santa Clara, California, and I'm not sure how old I was at the time, but I do remember my dad commenting about how there was a family that he went home teaching to. And of course then it was probably ward teachers, and now it's ministering brothers. So anyway, he went to this family, and I think that the father must have been out of work. They had a few young children, and they didn't have anything for Christmas. And I remember my parents putting together some Christmas for them, for the mother and the father and each of the children. And of course we were young enough, we couldn't go out and get things, but we helped with wrapping it up, bagging it up. And on Christmas Eve, I remember we all went in the car later in the evening because my dad wanted to go after their children would be to bed. And so we went over there and we waited in the car while Dad carried the things in. And I remember him coming back to the car, feeling so happy and commenting to us about how grateful they were for it. Those kind of Christmas memories, I know you have others like that too, where you're able to help people out, are very sweet, dear memories that mean a lot more than the commercialization that we see nowadays. That was one thing that I remembered. Do you have another one like that you wanted to share?
Well, I'd like to share it was actually Christmas 1975. And it was the first Christmas that I was home from my mission. I actually started my mission when I was 21. I made an attempt to qualify for the 1972 Olympics, but I was not successful. But I delayed my mission, the start of my mission, until I was 21. So my brother Dave was the first of the three boys to go on his mission. I was the second, and then my brother Doug was the third. We were actually in the mission field together for about 8 months. And then Dave came home, and then I came home in June 1975, and Doug was still on his mission in Los Angeles, California. On Christmas Day, 1975, Doug was still on his mission, but we decided to wait to open any Christmas gifts until Doug was home. So on Christmas Day, instead of opening gifts, our family went to the Primary Children's Hospital. It's the old Primary Children's Hospital, the original, and we sang songs to the children who were in the hospital, and I had the opportunity to visit a 10-year-old boy from Peru who had been in the hospital for several days, and he was really all alone. He had been sent to the United States and because of a severe condition, and so he was pretty much on his own, a 10-year-old boy, in the Primary Children's Hospital. And so one of the things that I got to do was to have a conversation in Spanish with this 10-year-old boy. And it really cheered him up. And I was grateful for the opportunity to bring some Christmas cheer into his life. So that was a great Christmas. And then, unbeknownst to all of us, except for my dad had arranged with the mission president for my brother Doug to come home. It was actually a surprise to our family, except for my dad. And so, as we were gathering on New Year's Day, 1976, lo and behold, my dad drove up with my brother Doug. So that was and my mother and my sisters shrieked with delight.
I bet they did.
So that's when we opened our gifts on New Year's Day, when all of our family was reassembled after the three boys had completed their missions.
One thing that I remember about Christmas that I'm not sure if I've said much to anybody about it, but we used to really look forward to finding out what Grandpa Leo Benyon, my grandfather, and my grandmother Elva Benyon, what they gave each other for gifts, because they had a tradition of giving each other a funny gift. And the way the tradition got started was that when they were first married back in, I believe it was 1926, they had 6 children in their family, but in the first one in 1927, Grandpa Junius Benyon, my father, was born in 1928. And 1929, they must have had their 3rd one on the way when the Great Depression hit. And they, bless their hearts, they always had a good attitude. But Grandpa was a dairy farmer and they weren't making much money. So they didn't have wherewith to buy lots of gifts for Christmas. But Grandpa Leo Benyon, they had he had a great sense of humor. And so he went out, I don't know what that first gift was, but he went out and spent whatever few coins he had and got something that was funny. And it made them both laugh. And after that, that was just a tradition. Every year, they would give each other a funny gift. And I remember them visiting us one time in California when I was younger, and they were there for Christmas. And that was the big thing we all wanted to know was, what's Grandpa and Grandma going to give to each other for the funny gift this year? And I do remember the one time, Grandma was such a beautiful woman, and she was conservative in her dress, and she always looked nice. Back then, you wore nylons, and it was always skin-colored nylons. Grandma, she opened that box and pulled out these black, lacy fishnet kind of nylons, and everybody just laughed because it wasn't like her. It wasn't anything she'd wear. And Grandpa laughed. He thought it was the funniest thing. But that was always fun to see what they were giving each other for their funny gift. And another thing I remember was Christmas in 1966. Just before we moved to Southern California, we were driving, or my parents were driving, an old blue Plymouth station wagon that they had had since I think about 1957 when they first moved to California. And it was old and it had problems. I remember many mornings as young children, we'd go out and 3 of us would line up across the front of the car and push as hard as we could to give Grandpa a running start so he could get that car going and be on his way. So anyway, Christmas came along that year, and it was on a Sunday, and we went in the living room, we opened our gifts, we were all excited, and my parents said, hurry, quick, run, get ready for church, and we had to leave. Well, the first one there was more than one there, I think, because we were heading out to the garage. Sorry, I didn't plan on this. But I do remember opening the door, and there in the garage was a brand new station wagon. Oh my goodness, did we squeal? And did we think we were riding to church in style that day? We were all so excited. Grandpa had already started working in Southern California, and he'd purchased the car down there. His parents had flown to Southern California to meet him, and he drove one car and they came in the other car and drove up. He parked it at some ward member's house until after we all went to bed. Then he went and got it, put it in the garage. What a surprise. That's funny, I get teary-eyed over it. But it was a surprise. Much needed. And we were all excited. Sorry about that. Maybe I'll have to redo this video. Christmas is a great time. And the thing that makes it great, the best memories we have are memories of family, memories of service, or others who do service to us. And it's a wonderful time.
Well, I remember the first Christmas that Mom and I were together. It was actually when we were engaged, and so one of the things that I got your mother was a harp bench, but it wasn't really a harp bench, it was actually a piano bench. And we still are using the same piano bench.
And I remember you also gave me a jogging suit. I think you were hoping I was going to turn out to be a runner like you.
Well,
we did use it together.
we used it together a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a fun memory, and then the children started coming along, and one Christmas, Mom was making some dolls.
I was making dolls for Marilyn and Lenora. They had got us going on it in Relief Society, and then I was going to finish them for Marilyn and Lenora.
And they were not easy to put together.
A few days before Christmas, I was trying to get the arms on them, and they wouldn't go on, and they were falling off, and I was kind of beside myself, and Dad was probably wondering how to make me feel better, but we did get them together, and we did give them to him.
And the girls were delighted with their dolls.
Yeah.
One other Christmas that I would like to just mention is the Christmas that we had in when we lived in South Florida. That was actually the coldest Christmas of all. Even though
we had cold ones here in Utah.
Yeah, we had cold Christmases here in Utah, but the thing that was different is that it was not supposed to be cold in South Florida on Christmas Day. We would normally have to run the air conditioner on Christmas Day when we lived in South Florida. But this particular Christmas Day, the temperature dropped below freezing, and that was a real problem because in South Florida, most of the homes, almost all of the homes, use electric heating. So the furnaces are electric. They're not natural gas powered, they are electric powered. And because of the high demand for electricity, because of the cold temperatures, the power company had to do a rolling brownout, which means that that different sectors of the power grid had to have the power shut off for several hours. And it just so happened that our brownout went from about 1 o'clock on Christmas morning until about 1 o'clock on Christmas afternoon. By the time we got to early in the late morning, the house was really cold. Now down there we did not have a fireplace, and it was damp cold. So that meant that it was really cold inside the house, and there was no way to get away from it. So we had to wear our winter coats, which we didn't wear very often. But on that Christmas day, we all had to wear our coats inside the house. Then we had been invited to dinner from some members of the ward who were a little bit elderly, and so they lived in a senior community that they were not affected by the brownout. So they had a toasty warm apartment, and they invited us to dinner, and that was a wonderful thing to get away from the cold. By the time we got back from our dinner with those good people, the power had come back on, and it was starting to get a little bit comfortable. But unfortunately, some of the children had been sick, and because of the cold temperatures in the house, they got sick again for a few days. But that's a good memory that I have about South Florida, even though it was a memory about the coldest Christmas that I can remember.
So one last Christmas I wanted to share was, I can't remember which year it was. It would have been 15 years ago. What was that, 2000? Anyway, it was Christmas that we became grandparents.
Christmas Day.
We went to bed Christmas night thinking...
Christmas Eve.
Or Christmas Eve, knowing Kathleen was in the hospital. And it was about midnight when we finally went to bed, and they weren't making much progress. She wasn't, and Peter said, "We'll call you." And I said, "You make sure you call us." And I think it was about 3 o'clock, the phone rang, and Peter said that Lucy was here, and that they had to do an emergency C-section. But the baby was doing fine. Kathleen seemed to be doing fine. Well, Dad and I jumped out of bed, put our clothes on, and got to the hospital as quick as we could. I remember that. Oh, man. Yeah.
So we became grandparents on Christmas Day. Let's see, that would have been Christmas Day.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which year. Lucy will be 15 this year, so.
Yeah. So 22 minus 15, so 2007.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Must have been about. So, yeah, and ever since then, every grandchild that's been born, we have been very excited. But would have been interesting to get a picture of us going in the hospital very early in the morning.
Yeah, it was about, 6:30?
Oh, no, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning.
4 o'clock? Okay. Well.
3 or 4 o'clock when we went in there, and it was great.
Yeah.
And we are so happy for all of our grandchildren, and hope that you have many good memories about Christmas too. Yeah. Well, each of us has over 60 Christmases. We could write a book about our memories. But did you have any others you wanted to share, or just want everybody to know? Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to everybody, and
And you are all part of our great Christmas memories, every single one of you. We love you. And want us all to be together eternally. And that's the great thing about Christmas, is because of the Savior, if we work hard, we will all be together eternally. That will be the best.